Hello, Mitch Tweedy with Compass Data, showing you how to do some basic flight planning in UGCS Universal Ground Control software. We fly DJI Matrice 600s and Regal Minibuxes. Download and install the current version of UGCS. We do recommend to stay current just due to Windows and Android vulnerability. It's best to stay on the current version. Two setup items is go to main menu and license and enter in your license code and activate it. We need the license version. Then we need to go to vehicles and profiles and check these defaults. Sometimes they're not very useful, like the Matrice 600 has a default fence radius, where is it? Of just like 500 meters or something. So if you're trying to cover a lot of ground, you'll draw a plan and then UGCS will say, you're outside this fence radius. So look over these settings and make sure they make sense, and definitely crank this fence radius up. You can see this Matrice 600 out to a quarter mile. That's 1400. No, I'm sorry. That's a ways. So increase that radius. But other than that, just check the settings for your vehicle you intend to use and license. Then we're good to go. Next, we're going to come up here to this map options, map layers, 2D objects, and essentially click add and give it a name. I'm going to use a quarter section just for planning. But that just names it. You now need to upload a KML or a KMZ. Doesn't seem to matter. So that uploads it, and then you need to move it over to the enabled side, but it does have a nice focus tool that'll bring you right in there. Seems to bring you in crooked most times, but that's okay. It's good to know how to use these tools as well. So if you double click the north, it'll orient you north. I'm using the mouse wheel to zoom out, and then I'm using the right mouse button to tilt. So this is a quarter section or 160 acres. I know that my Matrice at 400 feet does about 90 acres per flight. So I'm going to bust this up into 4 flights. And ideally, if you can get to the middle of the area, that just helps you maintain visual line of sight to the drone. The Matrice 600 is visible at a quarter mile, almost to a half a mile in rural environments. So to draw our first flight plan, it's going to look for a road. And I guess this, if I pull this same area up in Google, you can measure. With the line. I guess that is a half mile, so I do need to be right in the middle of this thing. I want to utilize existing roads and not tear up people's fields. There's the road. And they typically have a road going out to the middle, but we'll plan a couple flights from right here. So back in UGCS, add new route. Name it whatever you like, flight 1, DJI Matrice 600 or whatever your drone is. Return to home altitude is important. If there's tall buildings in your area, definitely make sure you're going to clear those buildings. And we found out the hard way, the maximum altitude above ground, this needs to be your max flight altitude plus the height of any hill. So if your drone takes off and flies up a 200-foot hill, you need to account for that here, because otherwise when you go to upload your flight plan, it's just going to error. But you definitely want to the Matrice 600 to return to home if you lose link. The other options are continue or scary, so definitely have it come home. And we always start with a waypoint. We like to spin our drone to wake up the inertial measurement unit. And then we have it go to work. 5 meters per second will get us 70, 80 points per square meter. 7 meters per second will get us around 50, which is pretty good for 1-foot topos. Always do adaptive bank turns. Those are nice, smooth turns that don't mess up the IMU. The stop and turn is very abrasive, and it could just max out an IMU and cause your flight to be junk. So definitely adaptive bank. So we start with a waypoint. And I'm going to use this little intersection. That's where I'm going to park the truck. That's where I'm going to launch and land. And I like to do the first waypoint just a few feet to the north. So the drone's going to be here during takeoff. I'm going to spin it on my way up, and then I'm going to tell it to go to waypoint number 1. I held down shift to drop that waypoint. Then I'm going to hold down shift again. I'm holding down shift. And I'm using a couple waypoints to get that drone to the place that I want to start scanning. But we found with our Regal Minibucks, the first 40 seconds of data is junk. There's no point in logging it. Then we want the drone to turn and head straight into the area scan. So UGCS released a LiDAR area in 2022. I haven't had time to play with it. I use the area scan. Speed is just dependent on how much density you want. Flight height, depending on airspace and stuff, but we'll do 120 meters high, and we'll do 90 meters between flight lines. And we'll draw this out. I'm going to hold down shift. I'm going to be a little generous and give myself lots of room. I'm drawing it bigger, so I held down shift, and then you do have to click on the first waypoint to close it off. Had some random angle there, but really it's whatever helps you maintain visual line of sight. So I'm going to have this go just directly north and south, or 0 degrees. And this looks good. It would come up, it would turn and do 5 lines. Ideally 4 is optimal, because then it ends up where it started. It would end up here. But 5 is okay in this example. But the biggest thing is you come up to settings and say show elevation. And I'm not super concerned about the elevation, but I do care about the time. So this is actually only 8 minutes. I get 15 minutes out of my WB 47s and up to 20 out of brand new 48s. So I'm actually going to make this longer. UGCS does this occasionally for some reason. Instead of picking up this very first waypoint, it wants to hop over there. But as I kind of spread this out, again, I want 4 flight lines. Oh, there we go. That's nice and clean. So it'll come up, burn that 40 seconds of data, then turn and start logging. And I want it to head straight in there. So you'll notice I'm grabbing the bottom. You definitely don't want to grab the top, because you could program the drone to crash into the ground. Let me tip that. That's bad. I'm going to change that altitude back to 400 feet or 120 meters. When you're moving these waypoints, you want to grab the bottom. There we go. That first flight line is right on the edge of the AOI. So I'm actually getting, however high your flight height is, you're seeing double that on the ground. Let me pull up a graphic. So flying 400 feet or 120 meters high, that Regal has usable data, 45 degrees either side of the drone. So I'm actually seeing 400 feet this way, 400 feet that way for an 800-foot swath. So it's up to you and your client. I like to run that first flight line right down the border. That way I'm getting good look angles at all points there. But I guess technically that first flight line could be 400 feet inside the AOI. But if the wind blew you off direction, you wouldn't have data there and you might be reflying. So let's just run that first flight line on the edge of the AOI. Still only a 10-minute flight line or flight plan, which is great. Let's be a little more generous. Yeah, we waste a lot of time in the office clipping data that's not there. So if you overfly it, and if you're generous, especially in the middle of nowhere here, that saves us time in the office. So still 11 minutes, awesome. Drone's gonna end up here, and then we need some waypoints to bring us home. So I'll switch from area scan. Again, don't like LiDAR scan, let's do area scan. Then use some waypoints to bring us home. Boom, blam. So I'm gonna use waypoints to get us to here. And I held down shift to drop those waypoints. And then I'm gonna do a landing. This is just for safety. The pilot is usually gonna land the drone, but if the pilot were to pass out or lose link to the drone, it's nice to have a landing programmed in there. So there she is. I like to turn and make sure I don't have any of those crash waypoints. But this is a great flight plan. And it's only gonna take about 14 minutes. So that's perfect for a WB-47 battery. This is a nice clean flight plan. So what I could do now is duplicate it, duplicate route. So now I have two of them stacked on top of each other. I'm gonna fix the name. Flight number 2, okie doke. Then I'm gonna toggle through flight number 2. We can actually turn off, well, I'm gonna leave flight number 1 on for a second. So I'm just going back or forward through the flight number 2, and it's highlighted the area scan for me. It's a little bit challenging, but if you hit you hover your mouse, well, let me show you. You can actually, flight number 2, you can select all segments, and you can just move, takeoff, landing, you can move everything. Boom, just moving the entire thing. But I don't want to do that. I'm going to keep the truck here. I'm going to be efficient. I guess when you move them, it might cause you to go a little cross-eyed, but I want this distance here to be the same as this distance. And I'm flying 120 meters high and 90 meters side. So that means I have 30 meters of overlap. So I don't have to get it exactly perfect. But you can see this gap is way too big. So you just move it in and out until that gap is the same. I guess technically, I can click out of there, move my takeoff, and landing over there. That works. Move takeoff. Move landing. You want to be very precise. If you program it to land in a bush, it would land in a bush. The base maps here are fairly accurate, but this works fairly well. I'm actually going to delete it and show you a different way. Delete route. Yes. Got to be careful because delete is right next to duplicate, but I'm going to duplicate number 1 again. Change the name again. Flight number 2, all other parameters apply. Go forward or backwards till you get to the area scan. Hover around here until it gives me the right icon. There it is. And now I can take off, landing, waypoints are all the same, but I can just move the area scan portion. And then again, get that gap correct. Come on. Not bad. I would say it's like 85 meters and there's 90. That's great. Now I'm going to turn off flight number 1, make sure flight number 2 makes sense. Boom, boom. Going to smooth out this turn into there. And more, that way she's heading straight in when I turn the LiDAR scanner on. And when we finish, I want it to, it's going to log its 4 LiDAR areas, LiDAR scans. I want it to exit straight out of there and not waste a bunch of time coming home. Now for flight number 2, I'm going to show elevation, 16-minute flight. That's awesome. I'm going to throw in some 48s. Be good to go. So the next thing we like to do is once we've captured our area, I would copy this again, do number 3. You guys understand it. Well, actually, we could get a little tricky. Let's do something different for flight number 3. We'll add a new route, and this will help you plan corridors to flight 3 next, entry 600 next. Really, this could be like 140 because there's no hill in this project. But again, if you have a 200-meter hill in your AOI, this would need to be your, your mapping altitude, 120 meters plus that 200-meter hill, and that'll allow UGCS to terrain follow. So if that were the case, if I had a 200-meter hill, should be like 320 meters, but I'm going to give it some buffer. So I'd do like 340 meters, just so UGCS can work. What I'm going to do is take off from that same location. I'm confident I'll have visual. I'm going to speed up to 7 real quick. Boom, take off right there. Come out here and burn about 40 seconds. And then we found this LiDAR calibrates really well if you have one LiDAR line that crosses all others. So this little double waypoint tells me to kick on my LiDAR. And it's going to shoot just dead straight across all the other flight lines. If I had some ground control, I'd want this to, I'd want some ground control on my calibration line, But then I'm going to do a double waypoint to tell me in the field, turn off the LiDAR. Then I can come up here. This is the same for a corridor. If you're doing power lines, just drop some waypoints. Have the drone like fly away from you. Like if there is a power line here, I'd have it start logging, turn it off, turn the logging, have it come all the way half or a quarter mile the other way, turn, come back home and land. So essentially you want to be in the middle of your corridors and do it that way. But to finish this guy up, this is our calibration line. I'm logging LiDAR right here. Then I'll turn. And we can add an area scan. Just boom, 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 boom. I'm hoping it only takes like 1 or 2 flight lines. You do have to click on that to close. Yeah, I'm gonna squeeze this down so that it's only 2. 1, 2 flight lines, adjust the gap. Okay, for now, we'll fix that. There you go. Probably fix the gap, but now my flight angle is wrong. So set that back to north. Wonderful. Again, I'm getting 400 feet either side of this flight line, and this distance is only 90. So even though I'm here, this laser scan is capturing this road way outside of what I'm getting contracted for. So we're okay. Let's check on our time for flight number 3. Oops. by clicking the gears and saying show elevation, 10 minutes. That's perfect. We now have time to do our area scan and grab some waypoints and bring this guy home. Waypoint to get it close, and then an actual landing right here. So final check, look, make sure there's no kill waypoints. Looks great. Let's talk about when and where to log the LiDAR real quick. We have customers that want 4 individual LiDAR scans. That's fine. You would let the drone burn some junk data, and then you would, the LiDAR switch is already going to be set to working. That means that mirror spinning. But right here, once she straightens out, you would hit log. And then right here, once she leaves the area, you would set it back to the middle, back to working, because you don't want the junk data during the turn. Let it complete the turn and level out. And then right here, before you get back in the AOI, turn it back to logging. It's important to understand there is a 2-second lag on that switch. So if you hit it right here at the border, it's not going to start logging until it's 2 seconds into the AOI. So you need to turn logging back on 2 seconds before it gets in the AOI. Let it come up here. And I guess you need to stop logging. I guess you could stop logging right here at the corner of the area, because there is a 2-second delay, and you're probably getting LiDAR up here into the turn. If you were to stop logging way up here, you're probably going to spray a lot of LiDAR, log a lot of turning sprayed LiDAR, which is inaccurate. But Compass, we like to log it all and do the cutting back in the office. So you would just let the drone turn, start logging here, log the whole thing. And as it exits the AOI, this is just a minor turn. So I guess you could even stop logging up here. You just want to stop logging 2 seconds before it makes a real sharp turn. But hopefully that's useful to you. Double click the north to reorient. Right mouse button up here. Load your KMLs under map layers and 2D objects. And definitely take advantage. Duplicate routes. Be careful not to delete routes. And then you can select all segments and move them, or you can just move the area scan and reuse the same takeoff and landing. Hopefully that was helpful.